Welcome and welcome back to another incredible episode of Disruptive with Gabi and Aaron. I am Gabi Kainov, and here is my esteemed best friend, Aaron Steinberg. We are best friends and here to bring a little sexy back. Today I wanted to touch base with you and I think dive deeper into our journeys. In our last episode, at the end, we had spoken about how nobody really knows what's going on. Now, we're kind of all figuring this thing out together. And many of us have found these niches where we find happiness and success, and times in our life where we find relationships that are meaningful and things and activities that are meaningful. So, you know, in doing that, there's a process and a journey, and it's not easy. And I think many of us grow up thinking that it will just happen naturally. But the reality is that you have to work very hard to have these meaningful things in your life. Like good relationships don't just happen. You have to work on them. Like a meaningful job that you love, it really takes a lot of work to get there into that position. To have a life that feels fulfilling, it doesn't just happen by itself. So I wanted to get in touch with you and, kind of hear your journey, kind of hear where you're holding in this weird, elusive kind of life that
Yeah.
we're like stumbling through. And just one more thing before I ask you, you know, another thing that we had mentioned was that being an adult is kind of like it happens to you. We are adults now. And still, for many of
Mhm.
us, many people our age, it doesn't seem that way. We still feel like we're trying to make others happy, our parents happy. We don't really know what's going on. And we kind of have this assumption growing up that like adults know what's going on. And in reality, they just don't. And like, hey, you're 18 now. Guess what? You're old enough to fight in a war halfway across the world. You can drive a car, you could get a job, you can move anywhere, nobody could really stop you. um yeah, it's just like you're an adult and you're 18, and it's like you're still kind of like you're
Mhm.
still a kid. Nothing magically happens to you that like boom, you're an adult. So I mean, I just wanted to ask you, like, how are you feeling about being an adult and about this journey of life?
The thing that comes to mind is that one of a buzzword that I hear a lot these days is imposter syndrome. Imposter
Mm,
syndrome is basically the phenomenon where a person uncharacteristically feels unqualified or kind of like they don't really think that they deserve their identity or what they're doing. This
mhm,
happens a lot with famous people like actors and singers that kind of don't really think that they should be having so much success, but they are.
mhm,
I do not like the term only because when you call something a syndrome, it's sort of like how we're probably going to get into this a lot about when it comes to certain psychopathologies, about how, like, I think when I was in school, I learned that one out of every three people has a mental illness, according
mm,
to the way they're described in the DSM-5 or DSM, whatever it is now. But it's I don't believe that anymore. If you go around and apply the academic criteria to people in 2023, just about every single person would qualify for some mental illness. Like I have no doubt about that, which to me means that maybe we shouldn't have certain definitions for these things. You know what I mean? Like if there's certain definitions for anxiety or like even general anxiety and everyone has it, then maybe it's not a disorder. Maybe it's just a challenge of living in today's day and age because of whatever reason. So I think
mm.
of this also. It's like imposter syndrome. There, it's something that basically everyone has, and there are certain cases where it's extreme. Like I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't even know what a good example would be. I guess if you're, I don't know, Sigmund Freud, Aaron Beck, like one of the pioneers in psychology, and you think you're a nobody, yeah, maybe that's imposter syndrome. But like for me and you, we're, I don't know, 26, 27, and we were kind of like on the way somewhere. We don't know exactly where. It's a natural feeling to have, and to me, it's not a, it's normal, you know?
That's a very fair point, honestly. And I really like that point that you were making. If everyone has it, it's not a disorder. It's something that it's a challenge in everyday life
Yeah.
that we have to learn to live with and deal with. I really like that thought. And I want to echo it because I feel like people have this expectation, and I'm not sure why. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just me and us. But I feel like people have this expectation that life should be easy. And then, therefore, when disappointing things happen to us, we're like, why me? Why does this have to happen? It kind of like baffles us and makes us like, confused in a way. But in reality, you're right. Like, life is filled with challenges. And not necessarily does it always have to result in suffering and pain. Very often it does. And hopefully we find meaning in that and can grow from that and overcome that. But you're totally right. life is going to have disappointments, and we have to realize that that's part of living. So fascinating point. But another point that you mentioned about imposter syndrome, Magnus Carlsen, he's one of the most famous chess players probably. I was listening to him on a podcast with Lex Friedman, I believe, and he was saying he has imposter syndrome, and he's like the best chess player in the world, and he has imposter syndrome about being like the chess champion, which is like it's mind blowing when you hear that.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
something everyone. But like I said, it's it's kind of like the term like one-itis when you're caught
Mm.
up with one girl or one guy or whatever. It's like I do like the fact that there is a word to describe that feeling, but I don't like the fact that it's itis. It makes it sound like it's an illness. It's like it might not be good, but if it's like
Yeah.
normal, then we should consider it normal, not some kind of disease or illness.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to do an episode on one-itis. I feel like that would
Mm,
be a great conversation. And by the way,
definitely.
guys, yeah, totally. Leave in the comments. I'm curious about where you're from, and you could leave your thoughts on what you think of imposter syndrome, if you think it's a real thing or not. And I'd love to hear feedback from the crowd. Yeah. Anyways, Aaron, so tell me about your journey. Like, what are you? How did you get to where you are as a young adult now?
Okay, so
Yep.
grew up in a little town in New Jersey called Passaic. Not such a little town, but small-ish. And I lived there, I guess, all in for about 25 years. I went to private Jewish elementary school in Passaic until eighth grade. I was in three different high schools. Not something I would at all recommend anybody doing if it could be avoided. In my case, it is what it is. I think it's also important to not harp on the past so much. I met Gabi the summer before that 12th grade, and then we were together in 12th grade for in a school called Hofsheim in Queens, in New York. And after that, I, like everyone else in our class, went to post high school yeshiva. Yeshiva is basically like that's what it is. It's a post high school program where you are studying Judaic studies for basically the entire day. It's a pretty rigorous curriculum where morning services shacharis is at what 7:30, 7:45, and you're basically you have a long lunch break and some other breaks, but basically it's from 7:45 until what 10:30
7:45
Sunday
in the morning to 10:30 at night,
exactly.
even later, honestly.
Sunday through Thursday. Friday is a shorter day because of Shabbos, which starts Friday night, and then Shabbos is, I guess, like a different ish kind of schedule, but not really like a day off in the sense. It's more of like there's just, I guess, maybe less like structure to the day, but it's overall very rigorous schedule.
Mhm.
After so the yeshiva system that Gabi and I went to, the way they have it structured is they have the main branch in Queens, which is where we went to high school, and then they have all these other satellite branches throughout the country and in Israel as well. And they have programs there for guys coming right out of high school for traditionally 3 years. And then people that continue in the system will go back to the main branch in Queens and continue studying there. I have a brother that's studying there right now. I know a lot of people that are been there for many, many years. So after 3 years in the branch that I was in, which was in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, that's when I decided I wanted to go to college. And I attended the esteemed, glorious, amazing college called Queens College, who me and I'm blanking on the name. Who Jerry Seinfeld went to famous, most famous Queens College alum. Now I'm joking about it. I didn't really like it, although it's like any other college, plenty of opportunity, none of which I took advantage of, unfortunately. At least for the most part, I studied psychology. I was there for about 2.5 years. I kind of got it done as quick as I can, taking like as many credits as I can, taking summer and winter classes. Graduated right before COVID in December of 2019 with a bachelor's in psychology. At that point, for some reason I was telling myself I wanted to be a pharmacist, but I don't even know where I came up with that. I think it was, to be honest, I don't even know. I think it may be just something I told myself as like a prestigious career that potentially can make decent money, but I don't know. I didn't really have interest in it really. I kind of was like everyone else at that age, 23 years old, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought maybe I did, but graduated. Then COVID happened. I basically didn't have a job. I started working as a pharmacy technician for a little bit, which was awful. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And I don't even think I had the worst of it. I hear like horror stories of people that are pharmacy techs at Walgreens and CVS, and they get paid very little and they are worked like horses. So if you're 23 or 24 or whatever age and you're thinking about becoming a pharmacy technician, I would highly recommend at least double thinking it because I just found it to be very menial. The labor was just Like I was literally just a laborer. I was basically a glorified cashier and got paid very, very little. And it was really, really bad. So I did that for, I don't know, 5-ish months. And then I don't know if you remember, that was the year that me, you, and our friend Mish, we went on a road trip to Florida. We were there for about 10 days and I quit right before that trip. So I was a free man. And then that was a really awesome, fun, awesome experience. When we got back, I was kind of like, okay, no job. Like, I was basically I was somewhat of a loser during this period. And I say that with love, but that
How old were
is,
you at this time?
I guess I was 24.
So 24, fresh out of college, pharmacy technician, not really like kind of aimless.
Yeah,
Mhm.
basically. Still living with my parents. I moved back to my parents' house after I graduated college, and basically had very little direction. I had a lot of ideas. It wasn't even that I didn't have any interest. It was more of like I was interested in a lot of different things. I had like some aloof dreams of becoming an actor, a singer, which honestly, I'm actually restarting voice lessons tomorrow. So the dream is not over, people. But
Broadway, you can call us. We'll leave
what
email. Yeah.
not with not but this is more of a not with particular aspirations to get anywhere. I really want to learn how to sing.
Mhm.
But back then it was almost, I think, oh, maybe I should become a singer, where it's like, well, you can, but it's not going to happen overnight and it doesn't really pay unless you make it big. So I had all these ideas. I was interested. I really like science, physics, biology, chemistry. I had a lot of interest, math, and I didn't really know which direction to go in. I ended up deciding that I was going to take these actuary exams, which are a series of exams that are not associated with a school. They're offered by the Society of Actuaries, which is the governing organization for actuaries that work in health and life insurance. And they offer these exams that you take separate from school. They're very, very rigorous. Most of them, at least the ones I took, were between 3 and 3.5 hours, about 30 to 35 multiple choice questions. But they take most people study for each one for about 3 months. I probably put in 300 hours for each one I took. I took my first one the very beginning of 2021. So like I guess when we got back from that trip, I started studying like 2 months later. And then during this period, most of this time I didn't even have a job. This was like all I was doing. I was studying 3 hours a day in Panera Bread. Also, funny story. So during COVID, there was like, where am I going to study? I don't want to study in my house. All the libraries were closed. All the restaurants were closed. It was like nowhere to go. I got, I found a library near me that was like open, but you could only go in for like a few minutes. But I tried. I for a few days I went there and I studied for like 2 hours, and then I got kicked out of the library. I think on my third day there because I wasn't I wasn't taking anything out. I was just sitting down and studying. So then I guess I don't know why it was Panera Bread. I don't know why I didn't go with Starbucks. But basically, Panera Bread had just a great setup, good internet. There was like no one there. I think they had a thing of like $5 a month for like unlimited free coffee. Coffee was awful, but I basically just sat there, got my nasty ass coffee, and just studied for 3 hours every day. I took my first exam in January of that year, and basically through that year, I took that exam and two more. I passed all three. I throughout this period, most of the time, no job. So people ask me like, "Oh, that must have been really tough studying." And it is. It is hard to study for 3 hours. I don't know, 6 days a week, or like average something like that. But I wasn't doing really much else. So like it wasn't that. I don't know. It wasn't that. I find working to be a lot harder than studying. But that's just me. And then the end of that year, also throughout this whole process, I was applying for actuary positions. After I got
Mhm.
my first and even my second exam, I'm like, okay, I think I'm ready. And I got rejected. I can't even when I say rejected, I mean having an interview and then getting a no, or having multiple interviews and then getting a no. If you count applications, then it's in the hundreds. Then it's not
You've
even
applied to hundreds of jobs?
hundreds.
You've applied to
Applied
hundreds of
hundreds.
jobs? That shocks
Oh,
me, wow.
definitely. But I mean,
Okay,
not
wow.
not all of them. Not I guess not all of them. I put so much effort into the application, but definitely hundreds. I probably interviewed all in. I will say like 35 companies.
That's
I
wild.
think yeah, I think maybe 40. I think something like that. Just rejection after rejection. It was brutal. I got my first offer at the end of that year. It was for a contract 1 year position. So it was and then it honestly was more like an internship. Obviously, I was in no position to turn down anything, and this was a great way to get a foot in the door because it's like the age old issue that you need experience to get experience, which is
Mhm.
what I was experiencing. No one wanted to hire me, even though at after I had my third exam, 3 exams pretty good. At a year or so out of college, 3 exams pretty good, but no experience, no internship, no nothing. And every interview I had to BS my way through these questions about technical skills. And it's like sometimes I think they bought it, but it's a funny thing because I feel like now, anytime I interview someone, I can tell in 10 seconds if what they're saying has no substance. But that was what I was doing. I was trying to give examples of previous jobs, like how when I was a camp counselor that related to forecasting medical costs, for upcoming fiscal year. Not to that, not that extreme, but
Right.
the same basic idea. I guess I wasn't such a good bluffer. And then I got this job at Aetna for that was my first job. I had it for a year. It was, like I said, more of like a glorified internship. Pay wasn't great, but I mean, for me, it was okay. I've never gotten paid really anything before. The job was, I didn't really love it. It wasn't very, like, it was hard, but it was also kind of routine and robotic. I don't feel like I learned. I mean, I did learn a decent amount, but it wasn't as rigorous as like a real job, I would say. And then at the end of that year, they did not give me an offer for a full time position, which also hurt. It stung definitely. They didn't want me. Um, I was told there wasn't really a role available, but I mean, I guess I do have myself to blame somewhat. I could have definitely done a better job, but they did not want me back. And then at the end of that year, this was the end of 22, start applying to other companies. And then I got my job at Molina right now, beginning of 23. So I'm coming up on almost exactly a year. This job is a lot harder and I'm definitely learning a lot more. And I'm kind of like learning what it's like to have a job, how to go through emails, how to communicate with different departments and these like things that I guess people that have been working at these traditional office jobs for a long time have a good handle on without even realizing it. But it's like learning, I don't know, which departments do what. How do you write an email? How do you stay organized? How do you organize your day? How do you go through an inbox? How do you allocate your time? Stuff like that. So I'm definitely, that's, I guess, a big area I've grown in over the last year.
Mhm.
And I guess big piece that I missed in this whole thing is that when I started my first job at Aetna at the beginning of 2022, that's when I decided I was going to move to Dallas. Still living in New Jersey at the time. I packed up my car, and me and a mutual friend of ours joined me for the ride, and we drove to from New Jersey to Dallas, stopping in Knoxville for the night and did it in 2 days. And I moved into an Airbnb for a month, monthly rental on the Airbnb. And I was looking for an apartment, couldn't really find one. I ended up finding another Airbnb in Fort Worth, which is an adjacent city to Dallas, which is where I live now. And I lived there total for 10 months. At first it was Airbnb, but then I signed a lease to stay in that house. And once I got this job, I was making a little more money. I was able to find an apartment, be on my own. So then I moved into my own place. The first time living on my own. I'm in Fort Worth now, and that's where I'm at right now. I'm not sure what the future is going to hold,
That's
but
awesome,
that's
bro.
my story.
So, I mean, a few things that are popping out of me that I'm really curious to like explore more is first of all, you seem to have a heavy religious background, heavy religious upbringing, heavy religious background, and you're moving around in this corporate world. But then also another thing that pops out at me is this idea of you living on your own and figuring out all this corporate BS jargon language that like you kind of have to figure out. And like you said, it's like people want you to have experience, and then you can't get experience because people want you to have experience. It's kind of like a paradox. I find that interesting, and I've had different perspectives with my own personal background and my own personal experience, and I'm gonna get to that shortly. But yeah, I mean, first of all, I guess just recognizing, if for anyone out there that's young, realize that you have to apply, like Aaron said, to 100 jobs. I'm actually shocked that you said that. 100 jobs. That's crazy. You know,
Hundreds,
hundreds. That
well
blows my
over a
mind.
hundred.
There's no way that that's true. Well over 100?
Yeah, but here's the thing though: is that
Yeah.
you you could submit an application in 3 minutes
Okay, I
for
hear that.
certain jobs, and might be a crappy application, but you
Right.
could do it.
Yeah.
So like, not all of them were like, meaning not all of them was I writing cover letters for and like references and answering like essay questions. Some of them I were, but all in submitted hundreds.
Right. That's bizarre. And then also, I guess like it's crazy that you moved out to a new city and you didn't know anyone, living by yourself for the first time. I guess like I just want to ask you, like, how's that experience been?
So it's hard, and I guess I didn't touch on the religious aspect either before, which is definitely a big component of it. Both of us grew up Orthodox Jewish. I right now do not consider myself to be very much religiously observant. I feel like I observe certain things in my own way, but I wouldn't consider myself Orthodox in like the day to day of how I live. And definitely, yeah, there is a definitely is a learning curve as far as, for me, this is for me, like a challenge that I have is learning how to integrate into the secular world is not easy because I guess unbeknownst to maybe both of us, but definitely me, I was more sheltered than I thought I was.
Mhm.
And I guess it does something to your mind when you I don't know if you can relate to this, where you find yourself in a scenario where a certain topic comes up in conversation, different topics repeatedly, and you just don't know what people are talking about. It
Mm.
makes you feel, unless you know how to master your mind and like take care of this stuff, it makes you feel that there's something wrong with you. You know what I mean? So it's like
Can you give me an example of, like, going into a
um
conversation, you don't know what they're talking about?
okay. So do you remember from Parks and Rec when
Okay.
Andy was found out that Ron was Duke Silver, had this alternate personality and played
Oh,
the
yeah.
bassoon or something. So then he said, "You know, I'm going to tell you all my secrets." One of the secrets he said was, "I don't know who Al Gore is, and at this point, I'm too afraid to ask." Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that, yeah.
So that was hilarious, but it was so relatable because for me, there are so many names, places, things in my head that I've heard, but I don't know what they are. So it's like, I don't know. I was at a friend's house um, for her Thanksgiving family Thanksgiving dinner, and the Cowboys were playing Thanksgiving football. And are you familiar with Dolly Parton?
No.
Right. So Dolly Parton is a like a country legend.
Okay.
Country music legend. I love country music, and
Mhm.
I didn't know Dolly Parton was till a few months ago. During when we were watching, I'm like, oh, I know who that is, even though I don't really know any of her music. It's like, how do you
Right,
not
right.
know that? So I sometimes feel that way because it's like to someone, especially who grew up in Texas and is into country music, you can't not know who Dolly Parton is.
Interesting.
It's like
Right.
it's if you don't, it's like it almost
It's
seems like
like
there's something wrong with
yeah.
you. But for me, it's very normal that I wouldn't know because we didn't listen to secular music. We didn't listen to country music at all. I got into it on my own. So the
Mhm,
country music that I like and that I listen to is all really new stuff that I heard on my own. You know, like my
mhm.
parents didn't teach me the lore of country music or secular music at all. So it's like you be in a conversation, Dolly Parton comes up, and either you're like you just shut up and you're like, hey, I don't know this, so I'm not gonna be involved in this conversation, or you speak up and say, who's that? But then you kind of sometimes feel like an idiot because how do you not know who that is?
Mhm. I hear
You
you,
understand
man.
that dynamic?
Yeah, I feel you. So how did that come up though? You're saying that you feel like that way a lot?
So there are definitely, I guess, yeah, a lot of areas where like that kind of thing will
Mhm.
come up. I feel like pop culture is probably one of the biggest areas where it does because I guess I don't have the same pop culture repertoire that some most secular people my age that grew up secular, or I don't know, let's say I'm talking to friends and they're talking about their high school experience about, I don't know, prom or something
Mhm.
that happens in high school and they're all like relating about it. It's kind of like how me and you could sort of relate to a Rebbe coming over and like telling you to like learn and to
Uh-huh.
stop distracting yourself with
Right.
talking about sports or whatever. So it's like we can relate to that and we can kind of commiserate over it because it's happened to both of us. But if we talk to if a third person was in the conversation who went to public school, they'd have a million questions, and even when we explain to them, they wouldn't really know what we're talking about.
I feel you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So it's a similar kind of thing. So it's like if you went to public school, secular college, that whole thing, the typical experiences that you would have would definitely differ from the ones most of the ones that I've had and probably you've had also. So
right.
it's like either I can just keep quiet and listen, or I
Mhm.
could kind of say like, "Oh, what's that?" Which is what I try to do now. I try to speak up and try to
Right.
like if I don't know what people are talking about to ask. But it
I
is
feel like
kind of like
that's the
a
right way to go.
yeah, but it is kind of like a weird area where it's like you want to, but it's also it's kind of scary because what if it's so basic to know that you don't even it's like you're scared to express that you don't know what something is.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. But anyway, so you're saying religiously though, how are you operating now?
So like I guess like in practice, like I would say I don't like I'm not observant in the sense that like Orthodox Judaism is very prescriptive in the sense of
Yeah.
what it takes to be an Orthodox Jew. Obviously, no one is perfect and no one's keeping the rules to the T, but like the framework of like the way life needs to be lived is very prescriptive. It's not really
Right.
I would say it's not very flexible.
Mhm.
Meaning within the rules maybe there is some flexibility, but it's I would say it's different than other major religions in the sense that your day to day, if you are if you are striving to conform to the rules, your day to day is dictated by what that is. You
For
pray
sure,
3 times a
yeah.
day. You
Yeah,
have to
I
your
just
diet has to be
right.
kosher. You have to dress a certain way. You know, you have to wake up every morning at a certain time to recite, certain verses. and there's a certain time you have to say it by every single day and at night. So it's
Right.
like there's not for until you die. So it's like, so there's so I would say, like, as far as the rules go, I do not conform basically to any of the rules. At this point, I would say I'm more of like a interested in the in the intellectual side of it. But it's a
Mhm.
funny thing. I feel like I'm in this period right now where I'm definitely shifting. Kind of like my mind
Mhm.
changes about certain things every day. I feel like spirituality as a thing in general was something that I never, even when I was religious, was something that I never really knew about or was into or really knew what it meant. And now it's something I'm getting a little bit more into, which is kind of funny because I never thought that I would.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I guess
Anyways,
that's where I'm at.
no, I love that, by the way, and I want to support you, and I want to support everyone listening, and I want to say, I would get into the religious and spiritual conversation, but I feel like that deserves its own episode, and we're
Mhm.
going to be a little bit more limited here. But I quickly want to say that anyone that grew up a certain way and no longer sees eye to eye with that way, it's so tough to find your own sense of like peace and confidence in what you believe is right and to go out and live on your own. It's so difficult. And I think, especially the more insular your community is, like Judaism is an extremely insular community. To me, understanding growing up as a religious Jew, coming out and saying like, "Hey, I no longer believe in this," like it's really weird. It's like it's very hard for people to understand that because so much of our culture and community is built around that religious faith, and when you don't have it, it's like you're kind of like bring yourself to an outsider. It's weird.
Yeah, and
So yeah,
I mean, my personal experience does not represent everyone's, and
right,
my opinions or experiences do not reflect the inherent truths about
right,
religion, Judaism, or like or anything like that. That's just my experience. But like I would say, like probably most other religions,
hmm,
there isn't really how to say this. There's no option to not conform. Meaning, like,
right,
if I do not conform, I'm choosing to not conform. But I'm not. It's not like this is what you should do. But like, it's okay if you don't. Like, it's not
right,
okay.
right,
Like
right.
you know what I mean? Like, you
Yeah, I
can't
do.
not keep Shabbos. You can't like,
Yeah,
what I'm saying. You can't
yeah,
not pray and do like follow all these rules. It's
right,
like you have to. And if you don't, then what you're doing is there's a term. The term they call it's off the derech. Derech is a Hebrew word for the way, the path. So off the derech
yeah,
means like you're off the path. So there are people like our friend. Like, we have a friend also who is grew up also Orthodox and is not anymore, and he leans into that term. He'll say it himself. He'll call himself off the derech and kind of like own that term. I do not do that. I don't like that term at all,
mhm,
because I think it's extremely pretentious of to name the term for like your way of living as like the way and everything else is
yeah,
off of that. I think that's just terribly narrow-minded and very demeaning to people that don't do that.
mhm,
Um, so, but that's to me almost a microcosm of what it is. It's there
yeah.
is no there's no alter like this is the way that it must be, and there isn't really within that you can kind of find your niche, but that is the way it needs to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, is we're definitely going to do a separate episode on this somewhere along the way. But guys, leave in the comments what your thoughts are on leaving your background, leaving your culture, or just not even seeing eye to eye with it. It's tough and definitely depends on the community. And like just to give a quick example, like to not be Christian, like it doesn't really involve much. Like what you don't really believe Jesus is the savior anymore, and a few other things. Like you could kind of maybe even hide it and nobody would even know around you. I guess if people don't see you in church anymore, they'll ask about it. But like, you know, if somebody sees you driving your car on Saturday, like they know, like, oh, whoa, like he's like left the community. Like it's bizarre. And again, I don't want to minimize. I don't really know much about Christianity, so I don't want to minimize what that might be. But just throwing it
Maybe
out
we
there.
should do an episode about how little we know about Christianity and other religions.
It would just yeah. But yeah, I would like to quickly offer my background. It's a bit different than yours. I'm a first generation Bukharian American. My parents are immigrants from Uzbekistan, which is part of the former USSR. Now, they were just extremely freaking hardworking, like the most hardworking people I've ever seen. And honestly, my dad is just an extremely stoic person. The world could be crumbling around him, and like he doesn't get phased. So it's something that I've learned to respect and has imprinted like a large imprint on myself and how I view masculinity. But basically, yeah, I grew up in the streets of Queens. My wife makes fun of me when I say the streets, but it's not a joke. I went to one of these schools for Bukharian kids, first generation kids, and I'm kind of like the last of them. Everyone else is already kind of second generation. Um, my parents had me when they were in their 40s. But basically, I kind of always grew up with this very open mind. My parents gave me like a lot of free space to think and explore, which was great. And I eventually went to Chavetz Chaim, where I met Aaron. And at that point, I don't know where I got this guts and confidence to be a very like kind of like rebellious person and do my own thing. Like I learned to hypnotize when I was 16, and I just had this like rock hard confidence. I don't know where it came from, like to the point where it was like kind of like obnoxious. You know,
Mhm.
I wish I could get back to that headspace sometime. I don't know where I had this like rock hard, like I could do anything I effing put my mind to. You know what I mean? Like it was just so ingrained. I end up becoming super religious from getting involved with yeshivas. Like Aaron said, yeshiva is a place where you learn Torah from 7:30 in the morning to like 10:30, even 11 at night. And I have a YouTube video describing yeshiva, and in my podcast, the Gabi kind of podcast, I did an episode with Aaron where we actually did a deep dive on yeshiva. It's our first episode. You could check it out. But whatever. So I end up becoming super religious, and we should definitely do an episode about this, the thing that I'm about to say, because I think it's so fascinating. And I debated if I would ever talk about it on a podcast, but I
Mhm.
think and for the sake of being candid, I definitely should. I ended up kind of doing what's called like a no fap journey for like 5 years. you know,
5 years.
yeah, yeah. From that point,
Mhm.
like at this point, I was in yeshiva. Let's say I was 17. By the time I was 18, I think I had started that journey, which was obviously the amount of I think people don't realize this, like the amount of willpower and strategy and like the amount you need to know yourself in order to accomplish such a feat is like insane. I think a lot of I mean, somebody would know if they ever tried to quit. Like to even go 30 days is like very difficult. Whatever. I mean, we could also do a whole episode on pornography, which I think would be interesting. Guys, comment down below what you think about. I'm like,
Of
I'm,
what?
I'm trying to, yeah, I'm trying to pound asking people to like comment on random stuff. But comment on your thoughts on pornography and nofap, and then if you want us to do an episode on that, that would be interesting. So I end up doing this journey, and I'm super religious at this time, I would say, and I end up going to various yeshivas, traveling around America a little bit for, let's say, like six years after high school. In after 4 years, I started my master's degree in marriage, family therapy, and professional clinical counseling. I graduated summa cum laude. I became a teacher for like a year or two just to make money, and then I got my first job as a school counselor, which basically I did for 2 years, which was literally I loved that job. It was like it was amazing. It was the best job ever. I literally would go into work feeling like I'm cheating life. I feel like I can't believe I
Mhm.
get paid for this. It was literally so awesome. The kids loved me. I loved the kids. I loved the school. The staff were great, and every day and I just had like a lot of personality. I would like come into school and I would like start singing and playing the guitar, and like the kids would like come all around, and it was just
Nice.
fun. Yeah, it was awesome. It was great. I really vibe with them. I did a good job. And then basically the agency, basically this is how it worked. I was getting paid through an agency that was billing, I guess, the government and the kids' insurances for me to work in the school. This agency basically told me that they couldn't afford my salary anymore, which was extremely unfortunate for me. I think what's fascinating is when I look back at my life, it so depends on what time period I'm looking at, like from what angle, like what things I'll decide to talk about, you know, based on like, you know
Mhm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
It's strange how
I
that
actually, I
happens.
just, I actually, I just thought of something like going back to what we were talking about a little bit ago with relating to other people and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I think both of us would be able to identify with this. Whenever I'm around or was around a conversation of people talking about like, oh man, like college is so brutal. Like, yeah, I'm taking like 5 classes this semester, and like, yeah, my professor's giving me so much homework. Like, I got 2 essays this week. I'm thinking like, dude, we were in. People don't understand. Like, yeshiva is there. There may not have been homework, but you're sitting in this building for the was that 15 hours with a hour and a half lunch break. It's
Mhm.
like
That's crazy.
I took I took 21 credits one semester. I'm not saying this like to brag, because look, we all have our own challenges, and I'm not good at a lot of things that other people come very easy to. But like, I took 21 credits one semester. People thought I was crazy, and I'm like, okay, 21 credits was at 6 classes. It's like 4 days a week.
Mhm.
So I'll do some
Yeah.
homework on the weekends.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's all about what's like
What you're
normal
used
to you.
to.
Yeah, already.
Anyways, alrighty, but guys, it's been a great episode. We're gonna move to closing soon, but Aaron, a quick trivia. Um,
Go for it.
I want you to guess my top three. This is in no specific order. Top three chick flicks slash like love movies, and there are three of them. I'm not sure if you're gonna get them. I think I've told you about these movies at one point or another, but
Hmm.
I really don't think you're gonna get them.
This is your top three.
These are my top three must watch. Like I don't care if you're guy girl, you must watch these movies. Amazing movies.
Titanic.
Okay, so absolutely yes, and just gonna divulge into a quick story here. In a few summers ago, who knows, 4 summers ago, when Aaron, you were living in Queens, one night after I was having like a rough day at work, we had like a long day, and I came back. It was like I came back at like 10 p.m. You know, and I literally called you, Aaron, and I was like, "Here, come to Misha's house. We're gonna we're gonna hang out." I didn't even tell Misha yet. I just come to Misha's house, and we invite our other mutual friend Rosie.
That
And
wasn't
that's
during the summer.
that was in the summer. Yeah,
So you had, oh, you're working at that camp.
I was working at that camp. Yeah, at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was particularly rough day at that camp. Anyways, so we get together and we start drinking and like we start talking and we're having like a great time. And then it's like 12:30 at night, and I don't remember whose idea it was, but it was like I think maybe Mish was like, "Hey, should we watch Titanic?" We were like, "Yeah, sure."
A long ass movie,
Yeah,
by the
long
way.
ass movie. Yeah, we were drunk and we just watched Titanic until like 4 in the morning. It was like it was such a great movie. Remember how badly I was crying?
By the way, this is another example. Most people have seen Titanic by the time that they were, what were we, 24 at that time,
Yeah.
25?
Yeah. And
I
yeah,
remember you. I remember you crying. Yeah.
yeah, I was crying, and it's such a fascinating movie. I think it like gets really philosophical. Leonardo DiCaprio does a great job, and that girl, I'm not sure what her name is, also fantastic acting. Just it was great, and it was really like it got me thinking. Like, is like this kind of like dilemma between safety versus love, and like what's more important. Like, she was engaged to this super rich guy who she could have gotten married to and lived a very cushy, comfortable life, but she fell in love with Leonardo DiCaprio, with Jack. And like, where does should we follow our hearts? Should we go with it? Like, it was just a fascinating movie to me.
Mm.
Anyways,
Well, what number is that?
it's no particular order, but let's
Oh, they're
say
not listed. There's
yeah,
just three of them. All
three
right.
of
So I
them.
got Titanic. Oh boy.
I really don't think you're gonna get them.
You don't think I'm gonna get either one of them?
You could let's hear a few guesses.
Have we watched either of them together?
No,
No. Are they recent movies?
one of them is more recent than the other, but no, they're not recent movies.
Can I get a hint?
Okay, okay, Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's. Huh. I assume that's a hint for one of them, not both of them.
Yeah.
Okay. I really don't know.
Okay, so I'll say it. This one, I actually just saw this recently. My wife showed it to me, and I like amazing, blew my mind. One of the best movies I've ever seen. The Notebook.
You know what's so weird?
Yeah.
The Notebook is like one of the first movies that came to my mind, but I'm like, I've never seen it. We've never spoken about
We've
it.
never spoke. I don't think we've ever spoken about it.
No, and I've never even
Yeah.
seen it. But the Notebook is obviously up.
Right.
Why didn't I guess that?
I don't know, man.
I'm mad
Cool.
at myself for not guessing the Notebook.
That's cool. That's cool. But
Mm.
if you haven't seen it, bro, you have to watch it. It's actually like an amazing movie, and it makes me so appreciative of life and the fact that like we have memory, and it's like so like I think about it, and I'm like, I don't want to be this shell of a person one day where it's like you don't even know who you are. It's so sad, and it was just such a beautiful movie, and I really liked it, and it got me thinking similar actually to Titanic, but just thinking about like what does love really mean, what's the point of life if at the end of the day, like if we do die, like what can we do to make the most out of what we've been giving in the short life that we have. And it's like, we think that, hey, our decisions when we're young don't really matter, but you're going to make some of the most crucial decisions you will make. Like the decisions you make at this time between your 18 to 25 are probably going to be more important than the decisions you're going to make in any other like 7 year period of your life, like after that, you know what job you're
Yeah.
going to get, your spouse, how you're going to live, where you're going to live, like so much of that is really decided at that early stage. Yeah.
Can I get a hint for the last one?
Okay, the last one, I doubt you're going to know this movie. I think I told you about it, but I doubt you remember it. Basically, this is what my wife told me. Lord, the singer, made a song called Supercut. And then that song inspired this movie. And then this movie inspired Taylor Swift to write the song Death by a Thousand Cuts.
That helped not at all.
Yeah.
I literally have no, I'm more confused than when we started.
No problem. It's called, I forget if it's called Someone Great or Something Great. Either one or the others. It's either Someone Great or Something Great. It's bro, mind-bending movie. Really amazing
Mm,
movie. It's about like love and heartbreak. Just a fantastic, fantastic movie. Like really like gets me like feeling like this person's heartbreak.
mm.
I like felt it. It was amazing. Really good movie. Three chick flicks slash romance movies that I honestly think, I don't know, is chick flick an offensive term?
I don't think so, but I'm not the best person to ask about these things.
Yeah. But anyways, we're closing in for time. Three movies I highly recommend. Go check them out. And Aaron, any closing thoughts?
Mm, yeah, I mean, I what we were discussing like this week, we're editing our first episode, and something we were talking about is about how you balance perfection with, just getting stuff done, even if it's not perfect. Perfectionism
Perfect and Schlug.
is the killer of progress. Literally, like it's the worst. And I'm like, I really believe it's so much better that we get this done as good as we can, but like, don't put in too much time that's going to derail the consistency of it. And almost to the sense where I believe that it's good to give yourself permission to suck at something that you're just starting at, because what is hard for me is that you're starting a podcast. I want it to be awesome right away. So it's like,
Right.
if I don't put in a million hours, first of all, even if I did, it still wouldn't be good. But then maybe, like, oh, maybe then I'll be able to encapsulate all these ideas I have of how to make it so good, and then it'll be awesome. But there's no other way, because if I don't do that, it's gonna suck, and then it's not gonna live up to all these hopes and dreams I had for it, which is
Right.
such a terrible mindset to have. You need to be okay with sucking at something, especially in the beginning. And for us and for anyone else starting anything, you're gonna suck at the
Absolutely.
beginning almost 100% for sure, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Bro, I love that. And we need to do a whole episode on this one concept. I have a lot to say on this one
Like
concept.
this pod disruptive is not going to be as good as a lot of other podcasts. If you are listening, there are other podcasts you can listen to that are way better than this
Yeah.
one. But if we keep this up, we're gonna get somewhere. I don't know where,
Absolutely.
but we're
Yeah.
gonna get better at this, and
Right.
we're gonna get there if we continue to do
Yeah.
it.
By the way, I decided on our motto. This is our motto for this year.
Not This was not run by me.
Yeah, it's not run by Aaron yet. We're the sexiest podcast of 2024.
I'll have to think about it and get back to you.
All right, I like it though. But anyways, guys, you've been listening to Disruptive with Gabi and Aaron. We are young, sexy individuals figuring out life. We're educated apparently, and we're smart too. So subscribe and also comment your thoughts on the movies. Comment your thoughts on our production quality. Send some love and let us know where you're from. We're curious to hear from you. Our email will be in the description. Also, if you like Aaron as I do, he has his own podcast called the Always Nuanced Podcast, which is a fascinating monologue podcast. It's more scripted and very like to the point, and I love how you give these amazing like analogies, and you're very like the narrative is just really well made. So
Thank
I
you.
applaud you. Yeah, if you like what I have to say, I have an interview podcast called Gabi Koinov Podcast. Both podcasts will have a link in the description where I interview fascinating individuals from all walks of life. And as of now, it's been a little bit more limited to Jews that I know, but I hope to expand that. And this is actually part of the process of expanding it, being able to do online interviews. But Aaron, thank you so much for joining me again. We'll see you next week. And any thoughts for what we might be doing next week? We don't have to
It'll be a
decide now.
surprise.
Yeah, it'll be a surprise. Okay, love you guys. Keep it real.